sources, Blake Lively is angry and devastated. Her team is scrambling to come up with an excuse of why 10 out of her 13 claims were tossed out by the judge yesterday. Now they're saying those SH claims, they weren't that important anyways. This is what they wanted. This is what they've been fighting for, to represent these retaliation claims in front of a jury. Now that no individuals are no longer involved in this case, this is obviously a humongous win for Justin Baldoni. Also a big win for Jennifer Abel, Justin Baldoni's publicist.
10 claims. Gone. Just like that. A federal judge looked at Blake Lively's carefully constructed legal fortress and tore down 10 of its 13 walls in a single ruling. Her team called it a victory, but behind closed doors, sources say she is angry, shaken, and devastated.
Lost out 10 out of 13 of Blake Lively's claims. To me, that seems like her case was a lot weaker than Justin Baldoni, but back then her team went on a victory lap saying, hey, we knew that his lawsuit was baseless and the judge knew that too, so that's why he tossed out half of his case, or actually less than half of his case. But now, when the same thing is happening to them, just much, much worse, they're saying that, oh, this is what we wanted anyways. We got the most important parts left.
So what really happened inside that courtroom? And why does it expose something far more calculated than anyone is admitting? Blake Lively filed her lawsuit against director Justin Baldoni in late 2024, painting herself as a victim of workplace harassment and a coordinated smear campaign. Her legal team stood outside courthouses, declared mountains of evidence, and positioned Blake as a symbol for every woman afraid to speak up. 19 organizations rallied behind her.
What really harmed Blake Lively and her case is that PGA letter that she wrote to Producers Guild of America to claim her PGA mark, her producer mark. The judge looked at that and he commented on that a lot in his ruling, saying that this shows that Blake Lively was acting like a contractor and not an employee. We've seen this pattern from Blake throughout this case, that she keeps sabotaging herself. It brings everything back to that smear campaign of what really happened was that Blake Lively did all of this to herself. So the claims that Blake Lively has left,
the media followed every twist. The world was watching. But here's what her PR machine never wanted you to connect. When Justin Baldoni lost parts of his countersuit earlier, Blake's team called it proof his case was baseless. A total sham, they said. A complete vindication for Blake Lively. They went on a victory lap. They scheduled interviews. They spoke about justice.
So her burden now is that she has to prove that the Wayfair parties waited until the premiere to retaliate against her for speaking up through those 17 points. Because now the retaliation isn't about SH anymore, it's about that letter. It's about her just speaking out. So the judge says that the jury has to decide if her speaking up through those 17 points resulted in the smear campaign, alleged smear campaign that happened in August, about 9 months later. And then Blake has to prove why they waited for so long to start smearing and retaliating against her. Why they waited until the moment when they were the most vulnerable themselves. It was their movie. They put so much money, sweat, tears, and blood into this movie. But then, according to her, they waited until that moment to start smearing the lead actors of their own movie, so they would risk that the movie got a bad rep.
Now, the same judge has tossed out 10 of Blake's 13 claims, and suddenly, those dismissed claims weren't important anyway. The detail that quietly destroyed Blake's case wasn't a leaked text or a witness testimony, it was a letter she wrote herself, a letter to the Producers Guild of America, claiming her producer credit. The judge read it carefully and ruled it proved she was operating as an independent contractor, not an employee, which means the harassment protections she built her entire lawsuit around simply did not apply to her. She handed them the weapon, and they used it.
That they themselves was most vulnerable to try and harm her. Anyways, let's look at what Rob Shooter is saying today. He has a source here saying that Blake Lively is devastated after legal loss, but vows, I am not done. Insider says she's angry, shaken, and ready to fight back. Blake is reeling after a crushing courtroom defeat, but don't expect her to back down. A judge dismissed, blah, blah, blah. Behind the scenes, sources say emotions are running high. She is angry. She feels like her story isn't being fully heard. But if anyone thinks she's walking away, think again. Blake is not quitting, the source says. She is.
What remains is razor thin. Blake must now convince a jury that the Wayfair parties waited 8 to 9 months after she raised workplace concerns, waited until the exact moment their own movie was most at risk to launch a coordinated attack against their own lead actress. She must explain the timing. She must explain the delay. She must make that logic land in front of 12 strangers.
Now, and it's not looking good for Blake. And it's not looking good for Ryan either. I wonder if Blake now regrets this, especially Ryan. I wonder what they were talking about in that apartment in Tribeca last night. If Ryan Reynolds was screaming and yelling and calling people. I know for sure he tried to call some trade magazines to try and spin them. I'll get into that in a later episode. But anyways, Friedman continues to say the defendants were not afraid of the truth. The plan was not only to speak the truth, but also show that's the same truth over and over again through presentation of actual evidence.
And there is something else quietly developing behind the scenes. Ryan Reynolds reportedly made calls to trade publications the night.
Before I go, I wanted to mention this. This is Blake Lively's reaction when Justin Baldoni's case was tossed, or most of it, or not actually most of it, less than half of it, was tossed back in June. Blake Lively came out with this statement saying that last week I stood proudly alongside 19 organizations united in defending women's rights to speak up for their safety. Remember, she got letters from 19 organizations that were supporting her. How embarrassing for these 19 organizations. Anyway, she continued to say, like so many others, I felt the pain of a retaliatory lawsuit, including the manufactured shame that tries to break us. While the suit against me was defeated, so many don't have the resources to fight back.
Very soon. Jennifer Abel, Baldoni's publicist, has now been removed from the case entirely. Every individual defendant gone. What once looked like a sweeping expose of Hollywood misconduct has been reduced to a single, difficult-to-prove retaliation argument. The question nobody in her circle wants to answer is this. When you build your entire public identity around being the voice of women and a federal judge strips away most of your case, who exactly were you fighting for?
And girls, it's a pretty simple thing.
All of a sudden, she's not the voice of women being SH'd in the workplace. Now, she is the voice of all women who've been a victim of a smear campaign. Anyways, there was also a statement from Blake Lively's team when this happened, and they said, today's opinion is a total victory and a complete vindication for Blake Lively, along with those that Justin Baldoni and the Wayfair parties dragged into this retaliation suit, including Ryan Reynolds, Leslie Sloan, and the New York Times. As we have said from day one, this $400 million lawsuit was a sham, and the court saw right through it. That's not what happened.
Subscribe to Starscope Daily, because this story is far from over.